to accelerate.
Nothing's stopping me now. It's time to accelerate. With the spirit in me, nothing's holding me down.
I'll keep on moving.
Keep on moving. With a master plan. It's time to accelerate.
Pressing ahead. I'm pressing ahead. I'm pressing. Come on.
It's time to accelerate.
Thank you for tuning in to this power-packed podcast by David Oyeleye. Are you ready to take giant strides in your walk to success? Do you think you can achieve more within a shorter period? Well then, you're in the right place. This is Success Catalyst. We bring you word-based principles and practical wisdom needed to supercharge your growth and accelerate your success than you ever thought possible. If this is your first time joining us, kindly subscribe and hit the notification bell to receive updates when a new video is uploaded. Today on Success Catalyst, it's time to accelerate.
Hi, this is David Oyeleye. Welcome to our Friday broadcast of the Success Catalyst. Before I share what I have for you today, I want to thank all our partners and friends for making this podcast possible. I want to also thank all our viewers and listeners for their gifts, strong and relentless support. Today we continue our teaching series on the blessing of creativity. On Monday we started an interesting subject which I titled the blessing of creativity, and we learned a lot of things in the last teaching. And I said to you that the number one introduction of God to us in the Bible is that of creativity, and this speaks volume. Genesis chapter 1 verse 1 says that in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. And I said on Monday that new beginnings requires creativity. To launch into a season of new beginnings in your life is going to require creativity. Not only that, creativity is the primary source of our prosperity. We need to understand that the reward for creativity is prosperity, while the reward for lack of creativity is poverty. We can always trace poverty to lack of creativity. And poverty, essentially speaking, is not due to lack of resources, it's not due to lack of property, it's due to lack of creativity. And when you see successful people have one thing in common: they are always creative. They are always creative. And today we want to continue our discussion today, and let's look at the scriptures once again. In Genesis chapter 1, the Bible says, Genesis chapter 1 verse 1, the Bible says, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. Genesis chapter 1 verse 26 says, and God created man in his own image. In Deuteronomy chapter 8 verse 18, we read how the Bible says that we should remember that it is the Lord who gives us power, ability to get wealth. And I said that the word get in the Hebrew also means to produce. So in other words, it is God who gives us the ability, the power to produce wealth. So which means that God does not give us wealth. God gives us the ability to produce. So the ability to produce is ingrained in our being. And we say since we are created in the image of God, and the first quality and ability that the scripture relates to us is that of creativity, it therefore means that we are born with creativity. So it means that creativity is not a talent. Creativity is not a special gift. It's not a special gift from God. Creativity is a blessing that all men has received from God because we are created in the image of God. And we need to understand that creativity is not just a skill that is peculiar to some set of people. Creativity is what everybody have in common because we are created in the image of God. And it's so important to understand this subject because this subject forms a basis, a foundation for our prosperity, for our success, for our wealth. It is very, 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 very important. And the blessing, which is the supernatural endowment on us by God, is what confers God's ability on us. When God created man, the first thing that God did to man was to bless man. And the blessing on man, the blessing released to man was what empowered him to carry out the responsibility that God wanted him to do. For instance, the Bible says in Genesis chapter 1 verse 28, it says, "And God blessed them, and God said unto them, Be fruitful, multiply, replenish the earth, subdue it, and have dominion." It is the power of the blessing that enables man to do so. And we said that God created man in his image. And the first description of God that we read about in the book of Genesis chapter 1 all through was that God was creating one thing. God was creating another thing. From the first verse to the last verse, we saw that God was creating. God was created. So if God created us in his image, that means essentially speaking, God has created us to create. So we are created to create. We are created to create. So the reason why God created us is that man will participate with him in creation. In other words, man will become a co-creator. And when God created man, God did not create everything that man needed. God only created the basic things that man needed. So we value creativity because we serve a creative God. So people think of God as dull, boring. Nothing could be further than the truth. It is a lie and a deception that sin and evil are creative and exciting. I want you to consider all the forms of beauty in the world. Who created the mountains, the valleys, the oceans, the river, the beaches? Who created sunset, light and color? Consider all the different kinds of taste and smells and sound. Who created music? In fact, consider the method that God came up with for human production. Would a boring God have come up with that? No. It makes you wonder what he is working on next, doesn't it? Now, look at the diversity of the natural world. If we want to be like God, we must value and enjoy creativity. There are at least 350,000 species of beetle. If you and I were the one creating beetles, we probably would have stopped at the 10th species. Now, this is so interesting because when we study creation, we just begin to see the brilliance of God's intellect. Now, we're talking about creativity, and I say that we value creativity because we are inherently creative. Genesis chapter 1 verse 27, with the NIV version. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. So God is a creative being. We are made in his image, therefore we are inherently creative. This is not a matter of being gifted. I said it earlier. There is no gift of creativity. It's just a matter of experiencing the creativity that we inherently possess. What is creativity, you ask me? Creativity means to originate ideas. Creativity means to originate ideas. So we have the power to originate things. We have the power to originate ideas. Creativity also means to improve an idea. It also means to improve the way things are done. Creativity means to solve problems in a new and unique way. That's what creativity means. It means to think outside of the box. Creativity means to use ideas to provide solutions to problems. Now, this is very, very important. Creativity also means the ability to make something new, something that didn't exist before. It happens anytime we stop doing things the way we have always done it, and we begin to think how to do things differently. And this is what creativity is all about. Now, we're still talking about the subject of creativity. We said that God created man so that man can become a joint creator. Now, let's look at something that is very, 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 very unique. When God created man, we never read that God created chairs. We never read that God created cars. We never read that God created bicycles. We never read that God created airplanes. So when God created Adam and Eve and put them on this planet, there was no house standing. There was no hind. There was no car. There were no cables. Nothing except the planet pregnant with possibilities. I'm very sure when they looked into the horizon, they saw nothing but greenery and animals, nothing. Now, when you fast forward to today, you will realize that man's creativity has since made the earth to deliver what it was pregnant with. Now, iron was dug out of the earth for us to be able to have cast. It was first discovered by the Hittites, with which they made chariots. Plastic has been used today to replace rubber. I believe when God created Adam and didn't give him a chair in the Garden of Eden, in other words, God was telling Adam, when you are tired of standing, create something for you to see, create something for yourself. So Adam was not supposed to pray about it. It is also good to know that Adam didn't have to pray or to consult God before he creates anything. So when God created man, God didn't create everything that man needed, especially the material things that man needed. God created essentially what man needed, and that was the immaterial resources, the things that man really needed to create. Since then, several minerals have been discovered for different reasons. Our earth is now full of skyscrapers, buildings of amazing designs, unusual architectural and engineering feats have been achieved by mankind. Now look at all the things that you see in the world today, because creativity is the only thing that improves the standard of our living. Creativity is the source of our prosperity. Now, when people look at the condition in their lives, they look at the poverty in their life, they look at lack of progress in their life, they look at lack of movement in their lives. One of the things that people do, especially Africans, is to blame these things on God, or to blame these things on some witch or some wizard, or to blame it on their lack of prayers. See, when it comes to the subject of prosperity, prayer is not the answer. When it comes to the subject of prosperity, fasting is not the answer. When it comes to the subject of prosperity, religious activity are immaterial. Creativity is the source of prosperity. And that's what the Bible says in Deuteronomy chapter 8 verse 18. It says, remember that it is the Lord who gives you the power to produce. The power to produce, because provision is the compensation for production. People who are poor are people who do not produce. And that's why Africans are very, very, very poor, because we do not produce. Now, for most people, the only form of creation that they are aware of is how to create problem. For some is sex, but creativity goes beyond all of this. So I need to remind you again that God created us so we can participate with Him in creation. Now, the primary problem of man is that of a creativity problem. It's not a nativity problem or money problem. People are broke and poor today because of lack of creativity. The country with the best economy or infrastructure isn't the one with the highest mineral resources. Take for instance, Dubai is one of the most developed cities in the world, yet with little or no mineral resources. In fact, I read that Nigeria has about 10% of the world's mineral resources, while Africa boasts of about 40% of the entire world resources. This is to say that 40% of world resources resides in Africa, but does it look like it? No. Why is that? Because we lack creativity. We lack the power to produce. Lack of creativity is the major problem of the third world countries. We have not learned to harness the creative power of the mind. We have not learned how to produce. And anyone that does not produce, that only consumes, is going to be broke, is going to be poor. They are going to be depressed and subjugated. So the way we exercise dominion is to be more creative. And that's why Americans today are the one who is leading the world, because of their creativity. So the Creator created us to be creative, the ability to get anything we want. So we have the ability to get something out of nothing. Now, the difference between man and animal is that man has the ability to create whatever he wants. So which means that whatever you want in your life that is not presently present in your life, you have to create it. If Adam wanted a chair to sit down, he would have to create it. If he needed to fly, we had to create it. Now, God created trees, but God didn't create chairs. God created apple, but God didn't create apple juice. It's so amazing for us to see that this subject is very, very, very important. Now, we say that the purpose of creativity is to solve problems and improve the quality of our living. You see, we can only appreciate this subject if we lived in the Stone Age and also have the ability to live in this present age. You wonder, how did they survive without telephone? How did they survive without Facebook? How did they survive without Google? How did they survive without all this amazing technology? They must have really, really, really lived a very, very wretched and poor life. But today, the standard of living of man has improved because of people's creative mind. Now, we have said that successful people are creative people. They are problem solvers. They are people who think outside the box. When we saw the revelation of God in Genesis chapter 1 verse 1, and we saw the next verse says, and the earth was without form and darkness covered the face of the deep. The Bible says the Spirit of God was moving upon the face of the deep. In other words, the Spirit of God was conceiving ideas. He was incubating ideas, and he expressed that idea when he said, and God said, let there be light, and there was light. That was creativity. God did not speak about the problem. God spoke to the problem. God created light out of darkness. God created something out of nothing. God produced light out of darkness. So all of the things that we see in the world today came out of the terrible condition of the earth at that time. That is the same ability that God has given to us. So successful people are problem solvers. They are not people that just talk about problems. They are people who approach problems and solve it. Successful people anticipate problems because problems are the primary source of our prosperity. Problems are the primary source of our success. Problems are the primary source of our wealth. Now, we are rewarded based on the problem we solve. Prosperity, I believe, is the reward for creativity. Conversely, poverty is the reward for lack of creativity. Every second, there are more than 63,000 Google searches. 63,000 Google searches every second. This translates to over 3.5 billion searches per day and over 1 trillion searches per year. And many of those searches are made by people looking for a solution to a problem. Google has become the third US technology company worth $1 trillion because they solve a major universal problem. Google's vision statement is one of the most fascinating statements I've seen. It states to provide access to world's information in one click. That's what Google is driven by. They said that they want to provide access to the world's information in one click. Look at creativity. So most people are still ignorant of the source of our prosperity, success, blessings, wealth, and relevance. It is to solve problems. Money is the reward for solving problems. Success is the reward for solving problems. Wealth is the reward for solving problems. And guess what? Solving problems requires creativity. Prosperity is the reward for creativity. Poverty is not the absence of property, but the absence of creativity. You are only rewarded based on the problem you solve. Solve problems and you're going to enrich someone else's life. But not only that, you will also be enriching your own life. And part of the reason for our existence is to solve problems in creation. God solved the problem of darkness in Genesis chapter 1 verse 3. Jesus solved the problem of sin. David solved a security problem, while Joseph solved a global economic problem. And they were all rewarded. And spirituality is not an excuse for lack of creativity. In fact, our God is the most creative being. So this, I believe, we need to understand. Money, success, wealth, relevance is the reward to the problems we solve. Our value is tied to the problem that we solve. And this, I believe, is one of the reasons why God has given us that creative ability so that we can solve problems, our own personal problems, and also the problems in our environment and in the world at large. And when we solve this problem, we can enjoy life more, can improve the standard of our living, and we can create more value, more success, more wealth for ourselves. Creativity is often the solution to not having enough money. People just need to understand this. You see, when it comes to the subject of money, to the subject of success, this thing is not about your tithe, it's not about your offering, it's not about your seed. It's essentially traced to your creativity. And the level of your prosperity, the amount of your prosperity, the quality of your prosperity is determined by the quality of your creativity. We just need to understand that. And that's why when it comes to money issues, it is not essentially spiritual. Money is amoral. In other words, it takes on the character of whoever has it. Sometimes we think that God is the one holding the money that we are supposed to have, but that is not true. Prosperity is the reward for creativity. Now, the truth is you have more money at your disposal right now than you can ever imagine. You are just blind to it because you are not creative. And creativity is one of the underutilized gifts amongst believers today. You can get anything you want in life without money, because God has given you the power to solve your problems and even environmental problems. Now, when most people hear the word poverty, the lack of money is the first thing that comes to their mind. And that's an erroneous way to think about wealth. Poverty is not fundamentally lack of resources, but lack of resourcefulness, lack of creativity. That's what poverty is. Poverty is the absence of creativity. That's it. It's very, very, very important. So we are still talking about creativity. And it's very important for us to note that God wants us to be creative. Now, I want to tell you about a story of a particular company. I don't know if you know, if I mention this company name, Blockbuster, I'm not sure it's going to ring a bell to many people, but I'm very aware that you know what Netflix is. Now, this is so amazing. It's just something that makes us appreciate the power of creativity. This is amazing because this company called Blockbuster once was valued for a $3 billion company. Blockbuster once owned 9,000 rental stores in the United States of America. They once employed 84,000 people, and they used to have about 65 million customers. But in 2010, Blockbuster filed for bankruptcy with almost $1 billion in debt. Why? Because Blockbuster could not keep up with Netflix. Now, amazingly, Netflix offered Blockbuster $50 million to buy Netflix after a few years that Netflix started. Now, this is where the issue is. Blockbuster was renting video. They had about 9,000 rental stores in the US. But Netflix came up with an idea. They started mailing DVD. They started mailing DVD to people. They didn't have a physical store like Blockbuster because Netflix could see where the world was going. Netflix could see where the world was going, but Blockbuster, they refused to think outside the box. And interestingly speaking, Netflix offered Blockbuster $50 million to buy them. And as at that time, that was just a revenue of 3 days for Blockbuster. But they refused to buy it. Now, after some time, Blockbuster fizzled out because they refused to develop creativity, because they refused to innovate. Netflix started as a DVD mailing company. They could envision the future of technology. They shifted from DVD mailing into streaming into our homes on mobile devices. Now you have Netflix on your phone. Netflix is more profitable than even our traditional TV network, even more than one of the popular video companies in the United States, CBS. They don't have a studio, they don't have a cable, and yet they are very profitable. Now, you don't hear of Blockbuster again. Blockbuster has been busted because of lack of creativity. I think I read one time that they only have one store. Imagine a company that used to have about 7,000 stores in the US only have one store. Why? Because of lack of creativity. Because of refusing to think outside the box. Also, maybe Yahoo Mail is another thing that comes to mind. When we talk about Yahoo, many of us don't even remember Yahoo again because of lack of creativity. Now, Yahoo turned down the opportunity to buy Google. They turned it down. And today, Google has replaced Yahoo. We barely hear about Yahoo again because of creativity. So creativity is a very, very important subject. Also, we've said that God created us to create. In other words, to bring into existence what wasn't previously present. Adam was supposed to create whatever he needed that was not present in the physical realm. God already provided everything we need in the invisible realm. That's what the Bible says. God has given us all things that pertain to life and godliness. So we have been created to create. And this is very, very, very important. It has also been said that creativity is the number one skill that is needed to thrive in all endeavors, in all fields. Researchers have revealed that our skills are not enough. Our gifts are not enough. Creativity is the number one skill to succeed in all endeavor in life. Jeremiah chapter 33 verse 3. Let's look at Jeremiah chapter 33 verse 3. It says, "Call to me and I will answer you and tell you great and unsearchable things you do not know." See, many times we based a lot of things on prayer. Many times we base a lot of things on prayer. And here, the Bible tells us about the purpose of prayer. It said one of the purpose and importance of prayer is the supply of supernatural intelligence, ideas, and creativity. Prayer is important to become successful, but prayer cannot replace the place of creativity. You must pray and be creative. If you want to succeed, if you want to prosper, you must pray, and at the same time, you must be creative. In fact, like we said, one of the purpose and importance of prayer is the supply of supernatural intelligence, ideas, and creativity. And that's why the Bible says in Jeremiah 33 verse 3, it says, "Call to me and I will answer you and tell you, show you great and unsearchable things you do not know." Now, in the last episode, I gave you a gist about Amazon, Apple, or Microsoft. These companies are worth approximately $1 trillion each. Apple is estimated to worth about $1.3 trillion. This exceeds the GDP of most countries. Just these three companies have a compound value of about $3.3 trillion. And you know that Africa's GDP is approximately $2.453 trillion. That's our gross domestic product. So the GDP value of Nigeria represents less than 1% of the world's economy. I'm not sure if you understand what I'm trying to show you. Now, this statistics reveals that the compound value of these three companies, that's Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, started by three individuals at a garage with practically nothing a few years ago, is worth more than the total GDP of an entire continent, Africa, with about population of 1.225 billion people. So in Africa, we have over 1.2 billion people. And it means that three companies are richer, are more valuable than 1.2 billion people. And this is equivalent to about 16.72% of the total world population. So it means that Africa has about 16% of the total world population. Now, this is a sad thing to say. Now, three companies are more valuable than the 16% of the entire population of the world. How can companies started by three individuals in a garage be richer than a whole continent of Africa? In fact, I read that Jeff Bezos is richer than Jamaica, Tunisia, Iceland, and Estonia combined. That's 4 countries combined. Did you know that if Walmart were a country, his GDP, which is $443 billion, would be greater than South Africa's $422 billion? That's a company. And if Africa were a country, her GDP would be only around 17% of the United States, which is $21.34 trillion. That is a whole continent. The world's second largest, and a continent where about 17% of the world's population, they share 1.5% of the planet's total GDP of about $88 trillion. The total GDP of the world is $88 trillion. Just one country, United States, has $21.34 trillion. Now, this is because of creativity. This is because of production. If you don't produce, you are going to be poor. If you are not productive, you are going to be poor. This is sad statistics, especially for Africa. This is not God's intention. God's intention for us is that we have the ability to produce. We have the ability to solve problems. We have the ability to create and to create value from the things that we create. So creativity is not a magical gift bestowed on just a few lucky individuals like Albert Einstein, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos. It's a supernatural ability bestowed on every man. And when it comes to the believer in Christ, it's even much more. And one major problem of the 21st century Christian is spirituality without creativity. Meanwhile, one of the functions of the Holy Spirit is the supply of intelligence and creativity. It's not just for speaking in tongues. I believe that this teaching has brought some value to you, and we are going to continue the teaching series next week, and we are going to be sharing practical things on how to discover your creativity and to release your creativity. I sure hope that you were blessed, listening to this podcast this week, and we see next week. Till I come your way, next time, keep winning. Bye for now.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Success Catalyst, and we hope it was a blessing to you. Kindly tune in again, same time next week. If you have any comments, testimonies, and want to partner with DOTM Global, visit us online at www.dotmglobal.com.ng or comment on our Instagram page at Success Catalyst TV. If you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe and share with your friends. We also encourage you to practice as you learn. This podcast was made possible by friends and partners of David Oyeleye Teaching Ministries. Keep winning.